Hey, welcome back to It's a Long Way Through. It's been a while. Been about a week, I think. I want to talk to you folks about perspective and what that is, at least the meaning. I'm sure we all know the technical dictionary meaning, but people's perspective and how it affects you and how your perspective judge affects other people. You know, so often when we feel like we're being judged by others, um, that's a hard thing to take, especially if it's a hard judgment, obviously. And so often I believe, I'll speak for me, but I believe it's a lot of us, will judge other people. Um, and when we judge people, it can be a lot of times on our perspective of the circumstance, and our perspective is based off of history and things that have happened to us and what we have felt and sensed and run across and what we've experienced in life, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So let me give you an example. You hear the birds? It's overcast today, but it's a beautiful spring day, pretty mild for this type of year, time of year here in New England. But this weekend, I had testing for my students. Some of you might know this, some of you might not know, but I teach self defense, traditional martial art style, have for decades now. But I had a black belt testing board, a brand new black belt testing board. People that I haven't had judge my students, and they came up this past weekend, this Saturday, which I'm very thankful for. They took time to drive up, in some cases, almost 3 hours. Matter of fact, in one case, a couple stayed overnight to get to my place, to my school in time for the testing. And I'm very grateful for them to take the time. But I knew going into this that it was going to be interesting because let me back up. Part of the people that were testing, I had 7 individuals testing this past Saturday. I think it was 7. Quite a few of them were teenagers. And one of them in particular was, I think 11 years old, 10 years old, testing for his junior black belt. Now, the way I work it, my students, when they're below 18, they are juniors. They are not adults. And it's a different set of requirements. My expectations are different for them than compared to an adult. Some of this is mentally. Mentally, I'm not expecting to be like an adult, and a lot of it has to do with physical, especially the physical part of it. Now, I've been teaching for a long time. When you run into practitioners, even master ranking adult students that have been doing it a long time, I'm talking decades, unless they have a lot of experience teaching kids, their expectations can be way different than somebody like myself who's dealt with kids and understands kids and had the privilege of working with kids for so long. You cannot have the same expectations from kids on the physical level and the mental level for martial arts as you can with adults. I mean, you can, but it's never gonna it's never gonna work out. Like anything, you've got a few odd junior kids, young teens, 13, 14-year-old teens, 10-year-old kids that are phenomenal. And that's just they excel at martial arts or maybe different things. But that's 1 in 100. At any rate, so I'm going to try to make a long story short. I got the test scores back at the end of the testing format. And let me first say the final answer, or the final say on whether somebody pass or fails, is me. Always me. They're my students. It's my school. However, I do appreciate with from the bottom of my heart, feedback, because I want feedback and I want the students to believe that this is very, very important, that they're being judged by a panel of master ranking students, which they were. I mean, we had probably 200 years worth of experience. If I were to add up all the decades of experience of the 6 board panel I had. Where was I going with this? Oh, so the final say is for me whether they're going to pass or fail. But it was interesting. There were 2 particular judges on this panel. One of them I didn't expect, but the other one I did. Because one of them just started teaching kids, opened up his own place and started teaching. But I was wondering how I was going to see his results or his thoughts on my students. And this particular woman, I don't think has any experience whatsoever working with kids. At the end of the day, out of the 6 board panel, these 2 failed 2 of my students. Not terribly, but they failed them. But their expectations of my students were so high compared to what it should have been at. And at first I got upset about it inside. And then I stopped. I said, Christian, you kind of expected this from a couple of these people because you didn't know them, how they were going to do. You didn't have a real good idea in some cases of their experience with kids. And I had to I reminded myself, their judging was not harsh. They're great people, nice people. Again, I'm very blessed that they came all the way up and took the time to be on my test board. And their feedback to my students at the end of the test was phenomenal. And my students really enjoyed it. But I had to remind myself, hey, this is just their perspective. Their judgment, their perspective is based off their experience. And they didn't mean anything ill-willed about it or trying to be mean. It's one thing if somebody is judging you and they're being mean about it, and they're just mean people, obviously. But it's another thing. We got to stop and remind ourselves sometimes. I think more often than not, when we're getting judged or people make comments about the way we do things in life, this is their perspective. This is their life experience. And I don't think they intentionally try to be mean about it, but it's so easy sometimes to feel like we're being judged or your students are being judged and take it harshly and get upset about it. And this is a good lesson for all of us to make sure that when I try not to judge people, but I think we all judge. Take a good look at yourself. Make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. And remember that when you're judging people or giving feedback to people, not everybody lives in your world. Not everybody's had your experiences. And there's always a right and a wrong, and there's always different ways of looking at different things. And we just want to remember that. And I guess I'm rambling now, but really, really important. People's perspective, people's experience is always different than ours. And we got to be open-minded about this. Anyway, that's it for today. Glad to see you all. I hope you have a fantastic week. I'm going to try to get back on here a couple more times on this channel and post a few things. I've got some thoughts I want to share. But as always, take care. We'll see you next time.